On opening Portrait for the first time, I think most of us can recognize it as something unlike anything else we've ever read. For those of you who have studied modernism before, perhaps in an American modernism class, Portrait is clearly a modernist novel, and the basic devices you acquired in your previous study will stand you in good stead. But for the rest of us, a closer look at how to read this book may prove helpful. Just glancing over the material before the first set of asterisks in your book, you may feel that if there's plot, you can't find it, and if there's a protagonist, you're not sure who he is. In fact, the story begins in a very odd way, with once upon a time, and a very good time it was, there was a moo cow coming down along the road, and this moo cow met a nice little boy named Baby Tuckoo. This sounds like a fairy story, a generic beginning to a story told to a young child, and so it is. In the Portrait Terms PowerPoint I put up on Blackboard for you, you learn the term synecdoche, which means that a small part represents the whole. In the case of Portrait, the first section of the first chapter, up to the first set of asterisks, could stand in for the whole book. Certainly, it tells you how to read the whole book. Now, you also know from the slideshow that the protagonist, Stephen Dedalus, is about 2 years old when we start in at Once Upon a Time. Stephen is a clever little boy, and a very observant little boy. At the beginning of the book, we have storytelling. We learn that his father told him that story, so the book asserts right off the bat that storytelling or narration is something men do. Joyce emphasizes the masculinity of storytelling, at least as far as Stephen is concerned, by letting us know that his father looked at him through a glass, that is a monocle, and that he had a hairy face. Both of these are associated with masculinity. So we have storytelling as masculine, but also now looking. To gaze at someone is to hold masculine power. Next we learn that Stephen is the center of the story because he was Baby Tuckoo, and we see him extrapolate from the story to the real world around him, as he'll do over and over in the book. He thinks the cow is walking on a road he knows, a road where he goes to get candy. Next we have a little bit of verse, followed by the pronouncement that was his song, followed by the same bit of verse translated into a childish lisp. Again, Stephen is asserting his centrality to the story. This is highly appropriate, as he is a toddler, and all toddlers are highly egocentric. Stephen's mother comes in when she can provide a service for him. Note that he makes a purely sensory analysis of the experience of wetting the bed. He doesn't say he shouldn't, or that he wishes he hadn't, or that he's ashamed he did, or any of the things we might think to say about a child's wet bed. Instead, he calmly, analytically notes that first it is warm, then it gets cold. His mother helps him with the problem by putting on an oil sheet, the smell of which he remarks. That leads him to note that his mother smells nicer than his father. Again, she provides a physical service for him, playing piano so he can dance. Moving on, Stephen's world expands outside his immediate family of baby, mother, father. You might notice that the sentences are getting slightly longer and more complex as we move ahead in this passage. That is, Stephen is growing up, and the style of the text is growing up right alongside him. This innovation of Joyce's is a way of representing consciousness. The story is being told in free indirect discourse, a really advanced form of it, and so what Stephen can see and understand, the narrator can tell. How Stephen might say it limits what the narrator can say. This will hold true throughout the book. If Stephen doesn't know what something means, the narrator can't tell us. For those of you who have studied unreliable narrators, the portrait narrator is a very special kind of unreliable narrator, one who is unreliable in the same way child narrators always are. He can only see part of the truth, and so while he reports very accurately what he sees, he's limited in what he's able to understand. It's not the same as narrators who are unreliable because they're lying or trying to deceive readers. With Dante in particular, we get the first hint of politics in the form of the two brushes in her press, one for Michael Davitt and one for Parnell. Now, I doubt that Dante ran down to the Irish Independence grooming shop and bought two brushes stamped with the images of Davitt and Parnell. Rather, she has seen the opportunity to begin to teach the little boy where his political heart should lie. Similarly, Later she'll tell him not to play with Protestants because they make fun of the Blessed Virgin Mary. When Stephen talks about the Vances in number 7, what he's realizing is that terms he thought were specific, mother and father, are actually generic because Eileen has a mother and father too, and they are different from Stephen's. So this is another way of moving out from the closed familial community of babyhood into the broader social and political community of boyhood. The whole book is concerned with this movement, out from the initial family setting into the bigger world, until finally Stephen is grown up enough to leave his family and set out on his own. The last element in the opening scene of the book is really important. This is where Stephen has done something he oughtn't, what we never know, and his mother assures someone that Stephen will apologize, to which Dante replies that, if not, the eagles will come and pull out his eyes. Stephen is hiding under a table, terrified. He makes these words, which rhyme and share the same cadence, into a poem, inverting the lines in a couple of different transformations. This section is really important because it's Stephen's first writing, and he gets the idea that writing is around him all the time. He just has to pick up the words. And also because he masters his terror through narrative. He learns some things and confirms some things through this experience. First, just as he suspected back when his father told him a story and his mother changed the sheets, power is allied with narrative and masculinity. And second, news to him, women who speak and have a mind of their own are profoundly terrifying, a theme that comes up over and over in the book. So Dante here is really pretty mild, but Stephen hears what she says as an existential threat, and he overcomes that threat by taking her words and transforming them into his own creation, something over which he has power. Throughout the novel, Stephen is going to face situations in which he feels himself either to be powerless or to have less control of things than he wants. In every case, he will use language and storytelling as a way to master his fear and debility. This novel is also going to be very much concerned with the sensory, with Stephen's interface with the outside world. He will go about in the rest of the book seeing, smelling, hearing, tasting, feeling, as he attempts to understand the world and maneuver through it. In all cases, sight will be associated with masculinity, and all other senses with femininity. That binaristic division of the world into male and female, the belief that men have all the power and so he'd better get himself firmly into the masculine camp, and the way this division prevents Stephen from actually understanding the world, will also be important themes of this book. At the very end, Stephen's mother hopes, as he prepares to leave for France, that he will learn what the heart is and what it feels. That is, that he will be able to combine his masculine learning and narrative skill with feminine knowledge of human nature. She understands, and so does Joyce, but not Stephen, that you can't be a good writer if you are blind to the complexity of life and have no feeling for your fellow human beings. Joyce shows us in the book why Stephen is the way he is, but he also implies that a boy with greater potential as an artist would figure out a way to resist these fundamental social structures that so blind him to the world. I hope you'll enjoy Portrait. As you might guess from this opening passage, it's a novel that rewards the kind of attention we usually pay to poetry. There is a plot, Stephen grows up, but in many ways it's less important than plot usually is in a novel. Instead, the exploration of consciousness, as Woolf says in Modern Fiction, is the real subject matter of this novel.